Hey folks, Commander Kilt-Man here from Moonbase Tartan. How are you all? Hope you're doing very well. As you can no doubt hear, we're back in the land of cult TV, cult sci-fi genre output from the 70s. The halcyon, explosively imaginative time of the 70s. Sylvia and Jerry Anderson, yes, stop motion, all that kind of stuff, had moved in to live action with the likes of UFO, which was great. And then they pushed the boundaries even further with Space 1999, which would of course be the British equivalent of a cerebral take on Star Trek. Bit sly that, isn't it, really? Because Star Trek, for all its fun episodes as well, and its, colourful, gaudy camaraderie and banter, it had a lot of very intellectual stories as well. So it managed to mix the two. But Space 1999 seemed to be predominantly, well, certainly season 1, to be very serious, very po-faced, very pseudo-intellectual, but also incredibly daft at the same time. But it was great, challenging TV for a kid. It was thought-provoking, mind-expanding, and such high production values as well. Every episode benefited from fabulous miniature model work, intricate designs, great visual effects as well, great production value, huge sets as well, great location work, great sort of sets built out of polystyrene and stuff, but far more convincingly than the likes of Star Trek had done it. But Moonbase Alpha itself and the interiors of all the craft and space vehicles that are used, brilliant. All the gadgets, everything seemed on a much higher level. So, anyway, I'm not a big fan devotee. In fact, since the 70s and a couple of reruns, I haven't really watched much Space 1999. When the fabulous Blu-ray box set came out from Network, season 1 and 2, I actually haven't even looked at season 2, because season 2 really, or year 2 as they call it, that is more Star Trek in many people's minds, because it's a lot more fun. You've got Alien of the Week, you've got, I've forgotten the name, Catherine Schell as Maya, the shape-shifting alien. Beautiful when she's in human form, but can turn into a big rubbery monstrosity at the drop of a hat. And it got really very silly very quickly. But season 1, year 1, let's get that right, was jam-packed with ideas. Moonbase Alpha, big accident, kaboom, Moon gets blown out of its orbit and then begins its huge odyssey, like the Enterprise, going through space. It's discovering worlds and life forms that no one else has encountered before, and trying to find their way back home, or at least trying to find a place where they can live, another Earth-like hospitable planet where they can decamp from this barren planetoid lunar surface. But anyway, it is great. I love it. To procure funding from overseas and to get a syndication overseas, you had to have a couple of American stars. So of course you get Barbara Bain and her husband Martin Landau, the great Martin Landau as Commander Koenig, and Barbara Bain playing his on-screen muse partner. They're not married in the show, are they? I don't think they are. They are in real life, but they were in real life. Dr. Helena Russell, and she's the chief medical officer, whereas he's the standing commander of the entire installation. And you've got loads of regular faces who will pop up throughout it, and again, guest stars throughout each episode during the season's run, and some great stories. So, those of you who saw my previous video, as in the one I did just before this one, I was expounding the virtues of going to the pub during Tier 2 lockdown, and how much I've been dying to go back to the pub, even if I had to eat food just to get a drink under the new regulations. And anyway, I never went. Nope, didn't happen at all. Circumstances conspired against me. However, I did find myself drinking almost a full bottle of whiskey. Yay! As is my wont. And that's how I ended up going back in time and space to the halcyon days of the 70s, my childhood, and watching on a Sunday afternoon Space 1999. which at the time I always thought was a little bit depressing because of its serious attitude, its complete lack of humour. I found it to be complete lack of humour. Listen to some of Barry Gray's music playing now. 70s space funk. If the flared trousers and the stacked heels on all the costumes didn't give the time period away, then the music certainly would. But I used to find it a little bit exciting yet bleak and somewhat melancholy as well, especially on a Sunday afternoon when you'd have school the next day. But the flip side of that was that in school, all your mates had seen it too, so you went around playing Space 1999, even though there wasn't often very many monsters or creatures or fights. You still managed to concoct your own little stun guns. Just use a stapler. So their guns were sort of like that, and they had different, stun, tranquilize, knockout, kill, whatever, vaporize, atomize, I think it was. And you obviously click the appropriate buttons. They were just staplers, and they used to have these little handheld comm communicator things which would open the doors to your level of clearance. And they'd have a little TV screen, a little black and white TV screen on top of it. And they were basically just like, used to use like a fire lighter, an oven igniter like this, because that's what they were. They had a little stick bit down here and a fatter bit at the end, which you could talk into, and you'd be like, opening doors. Some of us, thinking we were clever, would use something like this, a little pocket torch. So you'd be talking to Paul, I'm down in security now, and you accidentally flip the switch, and bedazzle yourself. And all your mates would go, dickhead. But I watched 2 episodes last night in this big nostalgia trip, and I didn't really pick them as like, I want to see these. I basically put on one I remembered really well, and then just let the disc play out into the next episode, so I'll watch that too. So I'm going to cover the first one now, and I might do another video on the other one, because hey, I've got time to kill. Drifting here through space on moon-based tartan. Anyway, so Dragon's Domain. Yeah, many of you know this one. This is the famous one with the big octopoid monster with the big cyclopean eye. Very Lovecraftian creature. And it's quite a good story. And it is dark, it is sinister, it is tragic, it's also poetic, and also, as we're going to find out, quite influential. Now, I do not subscribe to any Space 1999 fan sites or magazines. I mean, I suppose they exist. I don't. So I've not read any other fan-based critique with all the facts and trivia. So I'm going to get names wrong because I don't know. I don't know who did the model work on this. I don't know why. I don't know what library tracks were used in the score for this episode. Although there is some classical music in it which is taken from, the last thing I heard it in was in Rollerball, and it's Albione's Adagio, which you hear on some of the space tracking shots of transporter probe ships and Eagles. The Eagles, weren't the Eagles great? The Eagle, aircraft that they used, fabulous. And again, sumptuous. Even the cockpits had lots of room to move around in. Looked very comfortable as well. That was great. And the predominant colour scheme was a sort of cream. That may look white to you there, but it's actually a cream colour. And this was the closest approximation I could get to, a moon-based alpha sort of tunic. And like Star Trek, they'd all have a colour coding on one sleeve. So if it was only one guy wore black, which was Commander Koenig. Medical, I think, mission was yellow. Medical was white. And security was a lovely lilac-y purple kind of colour. That's so the aliens knew who to kill first. The bright colours, take them down, because they're expendable. So, Dragon's Domain. And this was a sort of story told within the notes of Dr. Helena Russell, Barbara Bain, recounting the tale of poor Italian Tony Cellini, who was a famous athlete and space explorer. He was the best all-rounder, as Commander Koenig says. And During the days before the moon had took off on its own little adventure, taking them with it, they were part of the big space mission on Earth, seemingly UK funded, so that wouldn't get very far, let's be honest. Better even get off the ground. And they're going to go on this probe to planet Ultra, I think it's called, where they think it's going to be Earth-like. So they've got to go out there. It's deep space, but they're going to go on this probe. And it's initially, I think you've got 4 people. There's 2 women and Tony Cellini and some other guy, and they go out there. They've been selected. They're the best for it. So they go, a hero's farewell, off they go. But what happens is that when they get out there and they approach Ultra, they find there's a spaceship graveyard there. Lots of spaceships models are just hanging there in space. Well, that's a bit odd. It's actually quite profound. Fucking hell, there's aliens. Wow, who's done this? A little in-joke was meant to be, you were meant to see the TARDIS in there and Starship Enterprise. And they did build them. And it was only going to be shown for like a couple of little seconds, apparently. So you know, a little in-joke. But this is before the likes of Predator 2, where you'd see a xenomorph skull in the Predator ship. So they got told, yeah, you're not going to get away with this. So they had to pull the plug on that. Would have been a great little in-joke to have left it in. But no, it's not there. Also a bit of a cheap shot, the Enterprise. As if the Enterprise were going to fall for the alien that does for these guys. And that the moon-based team would actually go and defeat it at the end of the day. Yeah, I don't know. Kirk would have come up with a better solution, I'm sure. But, so they dock with one of these ships. And as soon as they get on board there, Cellini stays within the cockpit, but the rest of his crew go onto this ship. And straight away, this swirling ball of light, like that, begins to hypnotise them. And then straight away after that, oof, this ball of light, down the end of the corridor looms this great big cyclops octopoid creature, which is just making shrieking horrible noises. And when they get bewitched, they fall within its tentacles and get dragged into this horrible sort of slimy, muck-encrusted mouth area. And they get dragged under there and all lights take place. And then this horrible, desiccated, mouldy corpse gets thrown back out again, and that's just them withered. All their life force has been drained out of them, and a lot of flesh as well. And it's like hideous. And 3 of these crew members get succumbed to this. Tony manages to like fight this thing after discovering this crew have been killed. Fight this thing with an axe. He manages to get into the air, the nose cone of their probe ship, and blast off and drift through space, growing. For like so long in space, would have been a much bigger beard, I think. Would look like a rabbi by this stage, or you know, one of the Taliban. And he gets picked up, comes back to it, and nobody believes his story. You know, a monster. Yeah, right. Something's happened there. You've made a mistake, and you know you're trying to cover up, aren't you? But of course, Koenig stands by his friend. Look, Tony was, you know, an all-round athlete, an all-round explorer, an all-round spaceman, and a poet as well. He says, oh, well that means he couldn't kill anyone. You know, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and then he writes poems upon that. Just because you're a poet doesn't let you off the hook, does it? But anyway, they don't believe his story. And yet still they allow him to stay on Moonbase Alpha because they scrap that Ultra probe mission. They forget all about that and they go, right, you guys, you skull-faced Barry Morse, who plays Professor Bergman and one of the mainstays, and Koenig and all the rest of them, you stay on Moonbase Alpha, that's your job. But then they get blasted off. So years have gone by, I think 5 years have gone by, and Tony Cellini has suddenly woken up with a big nightmare. He remembers the creature. Now, why has it suddenly struck him now? So he realises he's got a calling. It must be near. Well, I can vindicate myself, prove myself, and redeem myself, and also get revenge for the loss of my crew and the loss of my integrity because of that octopoid tentacled thing. So he tries to steal one of the eagles, but he gets captured again, and they process him and put little monitors on his brain, cue lots of conversations and flashbacks to how this guy's been. But then they discover, Commander, you better come and look at this. The theme tune's playing. Cue montage. So they realise that out in space, because don't look at the moon is still drifting endlessly, there's the spacecraft graveyard. Well, hang on, but we're 800 billion light years away from where Ultra's supposed to be, so how come that's here? Well, Cellini suddenly started dreaming about it, and suddenly there must be a connection. How has it happened? What's going on? Anyway, they decided to go out there, of course, and go and investigate and see what's really happened, if anything. And Cellini once again pulls a little stunt, because even though he's going with them, he manages to knock out Alan. Alan, played by Nick Tate, who's the Australian. Because don't forget, this is a multinational organisation. So you've got Russians, you've got Germans, you've got French, you've got Australians, you've got Yanks, you've got everybody there. There might even be a couple of Irishmen as well. Who knows? But so he's already knocked out Alan at the start of it, trying to nick the nick the eagle to go on his own little private crusade. And he says to Alan, Alan, I want to apologise to for knocking you out before. And Alan says, yeah, okay, and then knocks him out again, and heaves his body out, and says like, look, this is my mission. None of you need to come on this. It's personal. I'm going. So he blasts off, and it's great. Those eagles are great. The transport eagles have a cargo bay which you can put medical stuff on, supplies, food, people, weapons, whatever. But you can disengage it, so he just takes off with the skeletal craft of the eagle and flies out there. But they've got other eagles in pursuit of him, and Commander Koenig and everyone gets picked up, and they go out there too. But he's got there first, and he encounters, he docks on the old ship where he encountered this creature. And of course, he meets it again, swirly lights, gets hypnotised, but he's got a grappling hook this time, which is wrapped around this structure, so that if it drags him in, he's got a way out of it. And he's fighting with it, and he's stabbing it quite nastily. He's got a great big fucking eyeball there, which is right in his face. Stab the eyeball. But no, he stabs above the eyeball, because it's even more heroic, and you can see the blood dripping down this glowing eyeball. It's good effect, actually. The creature is good for what it is. And it's like, blood's coming down, he's stabbing. The rest of the crew suddenly arrive in time to see, yes, he's correct. There was a bloody monster after all. He wasn't lying. There's the remains of the three bodies of his prior crew are lying on the floor, just skeletons now, but bedecked in cobwebs. Why would there be cobwebs on a spaceship? You don't have spiders living there, do you? Do you? I don't know, because if you do, I'm not getting on one. That's it. I'm going to stay here on terra firma, where there's actually gabillions of spiders all around me. So, they now know it's true. Koenig and co. Because what happens is that the tentacle manages to disengage that rope and grappling hook, and it snaps. And poor old Tony Cellini gets dragged in there as well. And he's gone. But Koenig takes it on himself, and he gets dragged in as well. And of course, he manages to fucking splat this eyeball. Because he's a commander. Commanders think, yeah, great big eye, could be the root of all its evil. It's right in me face, plunge, and the light goes out, and all this horrible liquid oozes out of it, and then it just goes and disappears. And then the whole thing's left with like a bit of a postscript from Barbara Bain, Dr. Hannah Russell again, saying, so Cellini was right. After all these years, nobody believed him. It is a great nightmarish episode. The monster itself is super cool. It's just hot. It's pure Lovecraftian. It's obviously an entity which can drift from ship to ship. So if you enter that graveyard, that area, that region of space, no matter what ship you're on, it's going to suddenly appear with you. Because otherwise, how the hell did it get all these other people, on these other ships, and they're all just floating there? So, but it is a great concept anyway. My problems with it are really, the supreme lack of belief in Cellini's story. You just totally no one believes him. Well, Koenig and Professor Bergman, Barry Morse, do think there's something to it, because they stand by your man, and they do kind of, well, he's still a good man, even though everyone else seems to believe he may have murdered, or at least his accident may have led to the deaths of the rest of the crew, and he's trying to cover it up. So, but he's allowed to continue working. And not only that, in his lovely, spacious, luxurious accommodation room, flat, apartments, domicile, whatever you call these things that they live in, pod, I don't know, he's got all lots of ancient weaponry. Paintings of elephants adorn the walls, and he's got tomahawks, axes, muskets, guns, swords. This is a guy who's already got mental problems, which are recognised mental problems, psychosis, PTSD. You've allowed him onto an enclosed environment in space, well, the moon base Alpha, and he's got a room full of weapons. In that opening sequence where he has the nightmare of the creature, and he's running around in a big sweat, he picks up a gorgeous tomahawk. Actually, it's a tomahawk, but it's also been bedecked in Celtic, Viking sort of straps. So it looks a combination. I like to pick these things apart, being as I have a collection of tomahawks and axes, Viking and Comanche and Apache in it. So there you go. And he manages to stick this thing in. They have these little columns full of computers and communications networks. So you always go to like a little column and people talk into them like that. And he's put an axe, a tomahawk into that, like. And they do say, at one stage, Tony, do you remember what happened in this dream? No, I can't remember. It's just a dream. But it was powerful enough to make you put a tomahawk in the comm deck. Why did you allow him to have all this weaponry? This is a guy that in your mind, it can flip at any time. I don't know. Now, also, this is a guy that has encountered a monster in space and lost his crew, and then left his main ship behind and drifted in a little sort of salvage, emergency pod, the nose cone of the ship, through space for a long time, unconscious at the point of death. Then he gets picked up, gets interrogated by the company, who say, well, we haven't encountered any creature like this before, we don't believe your story, but then allow him to carry on working for them in another capacity. And then another crew go out there and encounter the same creature. What does that remind you of? Oh yeah, Aliens. It's exactly the same fucking story as Aliens, albeit massively expanded upon in the mythos of the Xenomorph saga. But it is the same concept. The start of Jim Cameron's movie Aliens is exactly the same as this. It's the story, the pitch is the same. Ripley has encountered this, lost her crew, drifted through space, the only survivor. The company don't recognise her story, don't believe it. We've never encountered anything like this before, blah, 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 blah. But still allow her to continue working for them. And then she will go out again and encounter it. It's exactly the same. Now, as I said before, I don't follow or subscribe to any Space 1999 fan sites. I don't have any books on it at all. These are only my reactions to it. And so this is probably well documented. I totally concede that. But I was really struck by this. I thought, my God, it's Aliens. But every film you see has been influenced by something that came before it. Something has put an idea in someone's head. And that's how stories evolve. That's how we get different movies. But it's also how you get films that have the same fucking story and the same plot and the exact same story and scenario. Because people rip each other off. And I'm not saying that Jim Cameron ripped this off, although we do know his history of ripping off established sci-fi TV cult stories. The Terminator, yes, Demon with the Glass Hand, and the Soldier from the Soldier. 2 episodes of Outer Limits, and there's a Twilight Zone. Harlan Ellison wrote them, and Jim Cameron settled out of court because he knew he was going to get done because he had ripped off these stories from Harlan Ellison. So, and has he done the same thing here? This story, written by I think the writer was called Penfold. Although the story did undergo a lot of radical changes apparently before it actually got to the screen. But it is good. It is good. I say the acting is always good. It's always intense and very serious. Where Space 1999 differs completely from Star Trek is its complete lack of warmth for the characters. Year 2, that would change quite a lot, if I remember rightly. I really haven't watched any of season 2 for donkey's years. But, I mean, literally donkey's years. And but season 1, they're very cold. Now, Barbara Bain, who I cannot stand, by the way, in it. I despise her character. She's important, she's integral, but every time she's on screen. And apparently, in their contract, Martin Landau stated, I want 3 minutes of screen time at a time, so I want a lot of time. And she said, well, I want, and this was unwritten in her contract, but it was adhered to, every 3 minutes that he gets on screen, I get 2 minutes. And she stymies every episode, as far as I'm concerned. And this is a personal thing, I know. But hey, I'm entitled to my opinion. And I just can't stand the way she speaks. And because she's playing Helena Russell as cold and efficient and very unemotional and very methodical and slow, which is fine, that's a creative choice. But the way that she speaks anyway, she has something I cannot stand in life. People with lots of excess clicky clacky juices in their gob. Oh God. Cholini. John. Every time she speaks, there's just too much moisture. I can't do it unless I've got whiskey swilling around my molars. I'm quite dry. But every time she opens her mouth to speak, I'm kind of like, oh, don't do it. And if you give her like a big speech, I'm like, oh God, no. Give me an octopoid, cyclopean, Lovecraftian, space entity anytime, rather than listen to her. But I still did enjoy the hell out of this. I enjoyed going back to Earth for these flashbacks. That's another annoying thing actually, because it's Helena Russell delivering the flashbacks, so the exposition at the start and throughout the episode. So she's got a lot to say in this one, because she's looking after Cholini. But he's good. What's his name who plays him? Gianno Garco, who plays Cholini. He's actually pretty good. He's quite intense. Nick Tate, I think it's Nick Tate who plays Alan, he's one of the dependable secondary characters. He was in a lot of the episodes, and he was always the one. He'd get knocked down, so he'd indulge in a fight with an alien or someone who's possessed quite a lot. But he was the man of action. Koenig was a man of intellect. He was the Captain Kirk. He would indulge in a bit of action as well, but he would also be, the voice of reason, the voice of sacrifice, that Kirk always was, and try to find the best way out of a situation. Where they differ as well is that he has an ongoing relationship with another character, and he can get angry. I noticed in the couple of episodes I watched last night, he can get angry with other people as well, and quite, acerbic, asserting his authority, which I like. It's a nice antidote to the clear chemistry and banter of the likes of Federation and Starfleet. These guys are stuck in a terrible environment, and they've got to work together, whether they like each other or not, because they can't jump ship and go back home. They're stuck there, so they've got to work together, and they're going to encounter all sorts of threats and terrible dilemmas they've got to work out. But sacrifices will be made. I forget how many crew members are actually on Moonbase Alpha, but they do lose people. So by the end of season 2, there mustn't be very many of them left, you know what I mean? And do they have babies on it? I'm sure that's an episode where someone does have a first child on Moonbase Alpha. I could be making that up entirely. I don't know. But it seems like an idea that they would have explored. So I'm definitely going to look at more of these, because it is good fun. It's a great bit of nostalgia. And I did watch the episode that followed after this, which also had an Italian guest star in it. They must have had a bit of a job lot of Italians coming at the time, and he's good because, well, I'll come on to that in the story of the review of that episode. But in the meantime, Dragon's Domain works really, really well. It's thrilling. It's got a monster in a show that's set in space and encountering alien races. It didn't have, certainly not in year 1, it didn't have many monsters that I remember at all. You did get Peter Cushing and you did get Christopher Lee, not in the same episode, but both of them. Christopher Lee appeared first, and they gave him a long blonde wig and a fake nose, which apparently tore his nose off, so he wasn't happy about that. And then when Peter Cushing appeared in a later episode, they gave him the same blonde wig that Christopher Lee had worn. I think that's a great bit of, a little footnote that the two Hammer stalwarts did appear in a sci-fi TV show as well, but not at the same time, but both wore the same wig. That's a great little anecdote, that. I love that kind of thing. So, folks, I have been, and always shall be, Kilt-Man. My ongoing mission to, hopefully, put a twinkle in your eye, a smile on your face, a spring in your step, and just to cheer you up, no matter what the time or the place. Folks, please do take it easy. Keep it kilted. Please do keep it Celtic. And I'm going to see you later. One big eye and big rubbery tentacles coming at you. Oh, hang on. Let's just get on to this. The fade out, end credits. Barry Gray at his best. Big bass drums.